A company can reduce its day sales and inventory with better marketing, better procurement, better inventory management, and better information. And in this video, I'm going to discuss these specific techniques for decreasing day sales and inventory. Let's start with better marketing. The 4 P's include price, product, placement, and promotion, and changes to any of these 4 P's can decrease day sales and inventory. The goal is to have the right inventory at the right place at the right time with the right amount of promotion. Decreasing the selling price of a slow-moving SKU can increase demand. Lower prices mean lower margins and potential brand dilution, however, so price decreases can sometimes do more harm than good. But a price cut might be warranted if the product was priced too aggressively and can be profitable at a lower price point, the company bought or produced too much inventory, and supply far exceeds demand. Demand for the product is seasonal and the season is over, or the product is obsolete. Narrowing the product mix can also reduce day sales and inventory. The marketing team might believe that launching new SKUs will increase sales, but it could backfire and cannibalize sales of existing products. Expanding the range of existing product offerings increases day sales and inventory and ties up capital for longer periods of time. Thus, any incremental profit from adding SKUs needs to cover the incremental cost of tying up extra capital and holding more inventory. Executives should regularly analyze sales by SKU and replace slow-moving SKUs with fast-moving SKUs. Aldi, for example, has achieved success by limiting its product offerings and focusing on fast-moving SKUs. The typical Aldi store carries just 3,000 SKUs, while it competes with retailers that offer more than 50,000 SKUs. Limiting the number of SKUs allows Aldi to make larger purchases of each SKU and obtain volume discounts, purchase inventory less frequently and therefore incur lower ordering costs, and manage its inventory better with less shrinkage, spoilage, and obsolescence. While full-service retailers might not be able to limit the number of SKUs as much as Aldi has, they still need to be wary of product proliferation. More product offerings means lower turnover and a higher day sales and inventory. Product placement also affects turnover. Slow-moving inventory might become fast-moving inventory if it receives better placement. For example, a retailer will sell more candy bars if it places impulse racks right next to the cash registers. And promotion can also affect turnover. If inventory isn't moving fast enough, the company might need to spend more money on advertising. Alternatively, the company might be promoting the product on the wrong channels or to the wrong demographic. Here's a summary of how you can reduce day sales and inventory with better marketing. Next, we'll talk about better procurement. The purchasing function can also be used to reduce day sales and inventory. If the company can obtain lower prices from its suppliers, that means lower cost of goods sold, higher inventory turnover, and lower day sales and inventory. And the company can obtain better prices by using supplier report cards, consolidating vendors, and making sure vendors comply with contractual agreements. Many companies have adopted supplier report cards to evaluate each supplier's performance. These report cards can evaluate suppliers on production lead time, transit time, on-time delivery, defect rates, frequency of supplier errors, prices and discounts, credit terms, and consignment arrangements. Supplier report cards incentivize suppliers to improve their performance. Companies could also use supplier report cards to negotiate rebates or discounts when the supplier underperforms. Companies can also get better prices by consolidating vendors. Instead of purchasing 6,000 units each from 20 different suppliers, a company could purchase 40,000 units each from 3 suppliers. By making larger purchases from fewer vendors, the company can negotiate better prices, extended payment terms, and faster delivery from the vendors it chooses to keep. Reducing lead times from suppliers can be just as valuable as obtaining price concessions, because shorter lead times means the company will need less safety stock and thus have to tie up less capital and inventory. The company should also periodically review its vendor agreements to make sure it isn't paying more than the contractually agreed upon prices. Vendors may bill the company for more goods than have been requested, or they might fail to apply any applicable price discounts. Here's a summary of how a company can reduce day sales and inventory with better procurement. Next, let's discuss how a company can reduce day sales and inventory with better inventory management. This starts with creating a cash management culture. Buyers shouldn't be pressured to overpurchase for fear of losing a sale. And the production team shouldn't overproduce simply to increase utilization. To change the culture, top management can change its system of rewards and incentives. Rewarding a production manager for positive manufacturing variances could result in the overproduction of slow-moving inventory items and a backlog of fast-moving inventory items. Management could thus change the reward system so the production manager is rewarded for taking actions that reduce days sales and inventory. Production managers should have a reason to consider whether an inventory item is fast-moving or slow-moving when they're prioritizing production runs. Top management could also reduce days sales and inventory by running inventory leaner. This means buying smaller quantities more frequently and/or reducing the amount of safety stock. To understand how leaner inventory reduces DSI, consider these two hypothetical companies. Company A buys $240,000 of inventory at the beginning of the year, and Company B buys $20,000 of inventory at the beginning of each month. Both companies need $240,000 of inventory for the year, but Company B buys the inventory more frequently and in smaller quantities. Thus, Company B never has more than $20,000 tied up in inventory at any given point in time. This frees up cash, reduces the risk of obsolescence or shrinkage, reduces inventory holding costs, and allows the company to pivot if there's a change in consumer demand or the inventory isn't selling. So why don't all companies just follow Company B's strategy? Because there are some advantages to buying the inventory just once a year. By having one big purchase, Company A might be able to get better prices from a volume discount, incur lower costs for receiving and inspecting the inventory, incur lower purchasing costs, and be better able to deal with any supply chain issues since it has more safety stock. Thus, there are pros and cons to running inventory leaner. When COVID-19 created supply chain bottlenecks, companies with inventory that was too lean ran into serious problems. Companies must therefore consider the trade-off between having a high level of customer service and maintaining cost-effective levels of inventory. Too much inventory increases your DSI and needlessly ties up capital, while having too little inventory can result in lost sales and unhappy customers. So how can a company run its inventory leaner without putting itself at risk for inventory shortages? Here are 4 strategies. First, consider using local suppliers instead of international suppliers. While local suppliers may charge a higher price, they'll likely have shorter lead times. This allows your company to make smaller purchases more frequently, reducing DSI and tying up less capital. Second, explore consignment arrangements with your suppliers. If you sell goods on consignment, the goods are not considered part of your inventory. Thus, selling on consignment reduces your inventory level and decreases your DSI. Third, explore drop shipping arrangements with your suppliers. If you can get your vendors to send inventory directly to customers, this reduces shipping and warehouse costs. And if your firm includes those costs in cost of goods sold, then by reducing those costs, you'll reduce day sales and inventory. Fourth, if possible, identify and work with suppliers that will allow you to return unsold inventory. Decisions on how much inventory to stock are difficult to reverse. It's costly to push inventory on stores and then be forced to get rid of it with a fire sale. Thus, it's critical to run inventory as lean as possible without risking supply chain disruptions. But another way to reduce day sales and inventory is to do an internal review of the company's distribution centers and inventory locations. The review could address questions such as, are the distribution centers close to areas where there's demand from customers? And can the distribution centers be consolidated? There's no need to pay for unused warehouse space. Moreover, unnecessarily moving inventory increases transportation costs, handling costs, and shrinkage. And speaking of shrinkage, improving internal controls for inventory can also reduce DSI. Inventory losses due to shrinkage can be significant, particularly for retailers. Strong internal controls should thus be implemented to safeguard inventory. Improving security, tagging inventory, and restricting access to authorized personnel are all ways to reduce theft. If less inventory is stolen or lost, the company will need to purchase less inventory, therefore reducing DSI. Here's a summary of how a company can reduce its day sales and inventory through better inventory management. But perhaps the best way to reduce day sales and inventory is through better information. Companies end up with too much or too little inventory because they fail to understand variability in supply and demand. Managers need accurate information on what to buy, when to buy it, and when to replace it. Manufacturers and retailers should be using inventory management systems that show historic sales for each SKU and facilitate predictive analysis. The company should be forecasting demand using a statistical model, not using manager's instinct or a rule of thumb. The model should use past sales data and current economic conditions to spot trends or other changes in consumer behavior. The company should also make cross-functional teams responsible for inventory planning, not putting it all on the shoulders of a production team or a procurement team. Multiple factors affect demand. The production team might not be aware of a new promotion being launched by the marketing department. The company thus needs to make sure the right products are available for promotions. The inventory management system should also automate the ordering process. EOQ, which identifies the optimal amount of inventory to buy without tying up too much capital in inventory or experiencing stockouts, is calculated by most inventory software systems. The inventory system should send alerts when inventory levels get low, and it should automate the reordering process. Improving the accuracy of inventory data can also reduce DSI. The company should have a centralized source of master data from which the company's buyers and the company's suppliers can track inventory levels in real time. If buyers can't rely on accurate inventory data, they might overpurchase inventory to protect themselves. A company can improve the accuracy of its inventory data by implementing strong inventory controls and reviewing its process for counting inventory. Accurate inventory counts result in accurate inventory records. But performing a physical count of all inventory is time-intensive, and it can disrupt business operations, so it's not practical for a lot of companies to do this more than once a year. However, companies can continuously count portions of their inventory throughout the year using cycle counts. There are several ways to perform cycle counts. You could count all the inventory in a particular part of the warehouse and then move on to another part of the warehouse, or you could choose SKUs to be counted at random. But another way of doing cycle counts is to prioritize SKUs based on sales value and turnover. One popular method is called ABC analysis, and it has you put inventory into 3 groups. A items have a high sales value and a high turnover. B items have either a high sales value or a high turnover. And C items have neither a high sales value nor a high turnover. Because A items have high sales value and rapid turnover, they're responsible for most of the inventory costs, and thus they should be counted more frequently than B and C items. More frequent inventory accounts can help identify slow-moving inventory, obsolete inventory, or inventory that's been lost. Companies can then get rid of slow-moving or obsolete inventory with a liquidation sale, by scrapping the inventory, or by returning it to a supplier. Inventory variances, which are differences between the inventory per the physical count and inventory per the accounting records, should be reconciled. The company should try to determine whether specific SKUs are responsible for the variances and try to spot any patterns. This information can be used to improve inventory controls and reduce shrinkage. In addition to improving the accuracy of its inventory records, a company should also work to improve its inventory visibility. The company's inventory management system should track inventory at all locations and should automatically update whenever inventory is purchased, produced, or sold. And manufacturers shouldn't just focus on finished goods, but should create a heat map showing raw materials, work in process, and spare parts. The company should also create supplier portals, where suppliers can track order status, delivery schedules, and product shortages. This can improve order accuracy. Management should also distinguish between safety stock, replenishment stock, and excess stock. Management can also determine safety stock levels using a statistical formula that's based on sales forecasts, production lead times, and the production schedule for each SKU. And management should avoid using a rule of thumb to determine safety stock levels, as that might work well for some SKUs but work poorly for others. Management should also consider recalculating safety stock levels every 3 to 6 months. Things change, and the amount of safety stock needed today might be very different from the amount of safety stock needed 6 months ago. The company must make every effort to identify excess inventory, which can build up due to overpurchasing, overproduction, and a general reluctance to take a write-down for obsolete inventory. After identifying the excess inventory, the company should use root cause analysis to understand why the excess was created, get rid of the excess inventory, and come up with a plan so that the excess inventory is not created again. Remember, less inventory means less capital tied up in inventory and a lower DSI. Here's a summary of the ways to reduce day sales and inventory through better information. And that's it. If you'd like to receive a series of PDF guides like the one I used to create this video, plus an Excel dashboard and a DSI calculator, just sign up for my email list by clicking on the link in the description section below. You can also become a supporter on Patreon and access both the Excel file and the PDF guide today.